You guys give the best welcomes ever. I love being here. Let me tell you one reason why I love being here, not only because of all of you, but I grew up coming here from 7th grade to 12th grade, through 12th grade, with my youth group for Student Life Camp. Anybody else do that? Was that still going on when you were growing up? Probably not, because I'm old. I see one hand. Okay, so I have so many great memories here. I probably haven't been in this chapel in 25 years, and it hasn't changed a bit, and I love it. Don't ever change the chapel. It's great. The seats, the 70s seats with the orange and the yellow, and it's just great. I love it. The Lord met me in really cool ways here in those summers as a teenager, and so love Covenant College and all that happens here on an ongoing basis, and I'm really glad to be here. But I want to maximize our time, and so I want to jump in, and here's what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about something that at first, being at a Christian college, growing up in a Christian home, many if not all of you, being very familiar with church and Christianity and walking with Jesus and all this stuff, you're going to hear me talk about what I'm going to say, and you're going to go, okay, I've heard this before. The simplicity of this message is nothing new, but the temptation to forget what we're going to talk about in these next 30 minutes happens to all of us all the time, including myself. And here's the basis of it, okay? The basis is this. It's actually possible, and it's even more than that. It's actually common to avoid Jesus in the midst of serving Jesus. It's actually possible and common even to avoid Jesus in the midst of serving Jesus. In other words, we can become, in some ways, these little mini professional Christians where we know what to say, we know how to act, we know when to raise our hands at the right part of the song, we know how to share the gospel, how to apply the gospel, we know God's word at a certain level, and so we become really good and seasoned at serving Jesus, all the while, in the midst of our serving, our hearts are moving farther and farther away from Him because we're actually not loving Jesus. So what happens over time, the temptation is, even at an early age, is to let our serving Jesus replace our knowing and loving Jesus. And so I just think perhaps that's some of us in the room right now. It's that reality of going, I have played the game for a really long time, but I'm not sure that I love Jesus. I know how to play church, but do I love the Lord? So here's where we're going to set the table. We'll set the table with a familiar story of Mary and Martha. You find it at the end of Luke chapter 10. I'm not going to read it because we're going to go to another passage in just a moment. But you probably know or have heard of the story. This is when Jesus, early in his ministry, goes into this little village of Bethany where Mary and Martha and Lazarus, their brother, live. And they end up becoming really good friends with Jesus. They're a key part of his friend group, if you will. But this, as far as we can tell, this is an account of the very first time that he's in their house. So he comes into their house, and we don't know where Lazarus is. He doesn't show up in the story, but Mary and Martha are there. And as the story goes, Mary, as Jesus comes and sits down, she sits at his feet, wanting to hear everything that he's saying. Martha is serving him. And she's busybody Martha such that Jesus kind of rebukes her. And he ends up saying, Martha, Martha, you are worried and anxious about many things, but there's only one thing that's necessary. And Mary has chosen the good portion, the better portion. So in other words, he honors Mary, and he, in a sense, very graciously, but truly rebukes Martha. But here's the thing. I want you to identify with Martha. Martha wasn't doing something necessarily wrong. She just wasn't doing what was best. Because think about it. Martha was doing exactly what you and I would do. Would you think about if someone came to your house that you had admired from afar for years? Somebody that when you think right now, if they showed up at my house right now, I would freak out. Okay, who is that? Somebody say somebody. Who is it for you? Let me hear it. I didn't hear it. I heard something, but what was it? Caleb Logan. I don't know who Caleb Logan is. Yeah. Okay. All right. Who? President Bowles. Okay, so if President Bowles shows up at your house, whoever it is for you, okay, I'm going to, look, he already outed me as having graduated from Alabama. I know you probably hate me for that. Any Bama fans in here? Any? Okay, all right, I got a few. All right, I know. Okay, so in my flesh, okay, my answer would be this. My answer, if Nick Saban showed up in my home, I'd freak out. I'd go, Nick Saban's in my home, right? So what would I do with that? How weird would it be? By the way, Jesus at this point in his ministry is rock star status. Thousands of people are following him along around the countryside of Galilee. And Jesus is in their home. They're nobodies. They're in this little village of Bethany. How weird would it be if Nick Saban were in my home and I just sat at his feet? And I didn't do what was culturally expected. I didn't offer him anything to drink. I didn't cook him anything. I didn't offer him anything to eat that was already pre-made. I didn't say, hey, can I take your jacket? I didn't do anything. I just said, hey, have a seat. You just talk. I'm going to listen. Saban would be like, all right, listen, I'm going to go. This is strange. So look, don't hate on Martha. Don't hate on Martha. It's easy to go, man, what is she doing? Why can't she get it like Mary gets it? Well, here's the reality. We're Martha. There's nothing wrong with serving Jesus. In fact, it's expected. Part of obeying Jesus is serving him. But when the obeying and serving Jesus replaces the knowing and loving Jesus, Jesus says, that's not the better thing. Unless our service is coming out of a disposition of sitting at his feet. And then he says, there you go, you got it. So how do we get there? In fact, I would say this. I would push so far as to say this. If you have gotten into the rut of letting your serving Jesus replace your knowing and loving Jesus, then that actually becomes poisonous to your soul. Okay, that's not an overstatement. Here's why. Because you get accolades and affirmation from Christian circles about your service, especially if you're gifted in certain areas, such that you actually think that that's what it's all about. So you actually, because of the affirmation, for me, God gave me the ability to teach, all right? So what do people do? Hey, thank you for teaching. That was so great. And that's encouraging. I need that. But if I begin to believe that to the extent that this is why I exist to preach, then I've missed it. And the more that I identify with that as my purpose and not to sit at the feet of Jesus and glean more of him and love more of him and be enamored with the person of Christ, then all I'm going to do is preach and preach and preach, all the while I move farther away from the one I'm preaching about. So what are you gifted at? Celebrate that, but don't let it replace loving and knowing Jesus. So what's the antidote, right? If we have poison, naturally, the tendency is to run that through our veins such that it is poison to our soul. What's the antidote? Well, here's the antidote. You go into the throne room often. You sit at the feet of Jesus daily. You don't neglect the corporate gathering of the people of God. You don't make it an individual thing and say, this is just about me and Jesus. You say, yes, I need that private, individual time sitting at the feet of Jesus, but I need God's people because when my heart can't get there, they help me get there. And so, let's for just a few minutes here, 15 minutes, let's go into the throne room. If you go to Revelation 5, something profound is given to us. God didn't have to give us this. He didn't have to give us this picture through John, but he does. And it's amazing. What I want you to do sometime in the next 24 hours, sometime this week, I want you to read Revelation 4 because it's the setup for chapter 5. Here's the very brief of chapter 4. John has been given this vision, the Apostle John, late in his life. And what God is doing with John is he's kind of just letting him peek behind the curtain of heaven. The way that chapter 4 starts, it says, "After this I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice which I heard speak to me like a trumpet," this is the voice of Jesus, "says, 'Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this.'" So it's like Jesus is just saying, "Hey, John, come here." John comes up, and he pulls back, and he says, "I just want you to peek in there and watch. Watch and behold." And he gets this vision. Now, what we're about to read is, do we know this is exactly what's happening in heaven? We don't know. Revelation is largely to be understood as symbolic language. It's giving us pictures that may or may not be the actual reality, but it's just giving us this vision of what it must be like in some capacity to embrace the infinite with the finite reality. Even though we can't even begin to describe it, John even here, as he's writing it all down, he uses phrases like, and the one sitting on the throne was like jasper. I don't know, it's just incredible. There was a rainbow around the throne that was like emerald. You just have to be there. It was tremendous. That's kind of what John's trying to do here. So you read through chapter 4, and there's just this magnificent worship going on around the throne of God. And there's all kinds of creatures, and there's these 24 elders, and there's these angels, and there's these multitudes of the people, of the creatures in heaven just worshiping God. That's all chapter 4. You get to chapter 5, well, let's say this. You get to the end of chapter 4, and you've heard a little bit, you've seen that the Father is sitting on the throne, and there's this symbolic language representing that the Spirit of God is all around the throne, represented in 7 torches. So you have the first person of the Trinity, and you have the third person of the Trinity, all in chapter 4. But Jesus, the Son of God, second person of the Trinity, is curiously missing until chapter 5. Watch what happens in chapter 5. "Then I saw in the right hand of him who was seated on the throne a scroll written within and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, 'Who is worthy to open the scroll and break its seals?' And no one in heaven," listen to this, "and no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or look into it. And I, John, began to weep loudly because no one was found worthy to open the scroll or look into it." What in the world is going on, and why is he so sad? The Father is holding a scroll. And John somehow, in the midst of this vision, intuitively knows that this scroll is the most important thing that could ever be opened. And as best as we can understand, especially in light of chapters 6 and 7, when it starts talking about each seal being opened, this scroll represents the redemptive plan of God. And how God's redemptive plan is going to unfold in human history. In other words, this scroll has to be opened, or the redemptive plan of God doesn't happen. And listen to what he says. Did you catch it? He says this, "And no one," listen to the magnitude of this, "no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll." Now, when you're in the heavenlies, there is no time. They're not bound by space. God is not bound by space and time like we are. But just for the sake of illustration, imagine that there was ability in that moment, in that time period, to actually have a concept of time. How long would that have taken? No one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open the scroll. So there's a line, thousands upon millions of people and creatures long, and they're all giving it a shot. And the greatest of angels and every cherubim and seraphim is trying to open the scroll, and they can't do it. And then the greatest of servants of God are giving it a shot. And with each one, there's great anticipation, right? Noah comes. Well, Noah was great. I bet he can open it. He can't open it. Abraham can't open it. Moses can't open it. Well, surely David can. David, open the scroll. David can't open it. Solomon can't open it. Ezekiel can't open it. Elijah, Elisha. All the prophets, none of them can open it. Mary, the mother of Jesus, I bet she can open it. She comes, she gives us a shot. Nothing. John, the best friend of Jesus, perhaps, seeing this vision, says, "Can I try?" No one can open the scroll, and sadness permeates heaven. Because look what happens. John says this, And I began to weep loudly. There is wailing in heaven because no one can open the scroll. And if there's no one who can open the scroll, then there's no hope for any of us. Then the redemptive plan of God can't take place. But then watch. One of the elders, this is verse 5, said to me, "Weep no more. The Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has conquered so that he can open the scroll and its 7 seals." And between the throne and the 4 living creatures and among the elders, we'll stop right there. A hush falls over heaven as everyone's weeping, as John is wailing loudly. And this elder, we don't know his name, we don't know who he is. He comes up, and just imagine, he comes up to John. This is the way I like to picture it. And he just begins to wipe John's massive tears. And he says, "Weep no more. Turn around. Look. The Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, he's conquered. Turn around. He's right there. Look. He's here." And watch what it says, though. This is what I started to read. "In between the throne and the 4 living creatures and among the elders, I saw a lamb." Didn't he just say lion? He turns and he sees a lamb, watch this word, standing as though it had been slain. So which is it? Is he standing or is he dead? Yes. He's both. He's all three. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah who's conquered everything that we need conquering for us. But he's this lamb who's slain, and he's showing us his scars just like he did Thomas that day. And he's this lamb that has taken upon the sin of the world, but he's slain but standing. He's the living, resurrected Lamb of God, and he's the conqueror. And watch what happens. He takes the seal. He takes the scroll, and he went and he took the scroll, this is verse 7, from the right hand of him who was seated on the throne. And when he had taken the scroll, as soon as he took it, hadn't even opened it yet, when he took it, the 4 living creatures around the throne and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, and they sang a new song. "Worthy are you to take the scroll and to open its seals. For you were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God from every tribe, language, and people and nation. And you have made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they shall reign on the earth." Notice the language there. This Jesus, this Son of God, takes the scroll, and what do they sing? It says they sing a new song, and here it is. You, we. You did it, 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 you did it. We benefit. We reign with you because of anything we did? Not in the least. You took the scroll. You opened its seals. You were slain. Your blood was poured out for the ransomed people of God. You have made them a kingdom and a priest to our God, and they, you, me, everyone who believes, will reign with him forever. And so then what happens? Then I looked, and I heard around the throne and the living creatures and the elders the voice of many angels, numbering myriads of myriads, basically uncountable, innumerable, saying with a loud voice, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing." And I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea and all that is in them saying, "To him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and might forever and ever." Here's a picture that I want you to get in your mind. I have no better illustrations this morning than to keep going with the whole Alabama thing, and I deeply apologize. I grew up going to Alabama games. My dad played football there in the 70s. It was almost as big of a sin to cheer for anyone other than Alabama as it was to, cuss and drink or whatever. Anyway. So I grew up going to games. Alabama Stadium sits like 101,000 or something like that now, but when I was a kid, it only set 73,000. So this is when it was much smaller, even though still very large, obviously. But I was at this game. Now, it just so happens, not just picking this because I know there's probably a lot of Georgia fans in here, just happened to be an Alabama-Georgia game, okay? I've never been, in all my years, I've probably been, I don't know how many Alabama games I've been to over the years. I've never, in all my years, heard the crowd like it was that day, from beginning to end. It was a night game, and the crowd was just electric the entire time. We stood the entire time. Alabama won the game on a last-minute field goal. And when that ball went through the uprights, the crowd lost their mind. And my dad and I are there in the stadium, and we're hugging each other, and cups are flying everywhere, and you're getting soaked with all kinds of who knows what liquid. And it is just pandemonium. It's crazy. But something in all the years of going to those games, I've never seen this happen. Yes, it was deafening. Yes, it was crazy. But after the game was over, no one wanted to leave. I've never seen it. It was for 30 minutes after the game. Crowd's still cheering. Players are still on the field. They're making their way around the stadium, and when they show up to a new section, that section would go crazy. Now, in a sense, we were kind of worshiping these players, right? You're awesome. You conquered. You're the victor, right? I can remember turning to my dad and saying, have you ever seen anything like this? In all your years, he says, no. And then I said, as a young boy, I said, do we have to leave? And he said, well, yeah, eventually we do. I didn't want it to end. So here's the picture I want you to get. When Jesus took that scroll, it's such a bad illustration. It was like the ball going through the uprights, but times quadrillion. Where when he grabbed that scroll, heaven went nuts. Lost their minds, threw cups everywhere. Pandemonium. And when Jesus took that scroll, everyone worshiped and worshiped and worshiped and worshiped and said, there's the victor. There's the conqueror. There's the lion. There's the lamb. And we got to sing. We got to sing worthy, 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 and holy, 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 because there's nobody like him. And they're turning to each other, and they're going, do we have to leave? Does this ever end? And they get to say to each other, no, we don't ever have to stop doing this. This lasts forever and ever and ever, and because our hearts are united to Jesus, we don't ever get tired of it either, because we are found most full, most complete, most joyous when we're worshiping Jesus. And so what's this life about? It's not fundamentally about serving him. It's fundamentally about worshiping him, about loving him, about joining in even now. What is this life? It's a dress rehearsal. It's a foretaste for that reality. Where do you find your most joy now? Where do you find your most complete reality now? Where do you find fulfillment now? It's when you are in that posture of celebrating, worshiping, honoring, lifting up, glorifying, throwing your cups in the air over Jesus and saying, I don't want to ever stop doing this. So here's my last thought. I want you to think about this. Not in a posture of guilt or shame. I just want you to go, okay, if at some level that doesn't stir something in me, then I need to talk to someone about that. I want to be enamored with worshiping Jesus. I want to. And I'm not there. Would you help me? Can we pray together? Could we spend time in the Word before this Jesus together? Could we worship together? Father, help us get there. Help us to get to that space and that place of worshiping Christ. Fill us with joy. Lord, forgive us Forgive us of how we have allowed our serving you to replace our knowing you and loving you. Help us to be like Mary. I like to think that Mary at some point got up and began to help Martha, but only after she had sat at your feet and worshiped. So let our service be fueled out of our worship. We love you, Jesus. It's in your name we pray. Amen.